edit because we had so much, and there was some amazing. I mean, I was swimming with great whites with Michael Muller and Laird Hamilton at Guadalupe Island, and I mean, this amazing Paul Hilton, this wildlife photographer. He was in Surabaya, Indonesia, going undercover to the shark traders and making deals. He was in like warehouses with like 20,000 fins, and at a certain point, it's just like you can't tell. It's like we have to wrap up the movie or keep it focused. But there were so many because the activists. I mean, like as you can see, Reggie Domingo, and Gary Stokes and Peter Hammerstead. I mean, they literally live this and breathe this and do this every day. And for there's no money in it. I mean, they go on donations. So you feel, as a filmmaker, you feel so responsible for telling their story, and then when you like cut a part out of the movie, it's you're like, I'm so sorry you like risked your life and went and did this thing, but that's just but they all are down with the cause and want it to be, just want the movie out there, want the message out there. So if you guys enjoy it, and I know enjoy isn't the right word, but thank you for sitting through it. Wow.
Well, I want to go back to, I do think it's a tough watch, but there is a real love and real passion for the sharks from the activists. And I think there's a moment where, for me, your curiosity turns into a love affair with sharks. And so I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about that shift, because I think that's where we need to get people to be excited about the conservation.
Yeah, and the truth is, unless you're in the water with them, you're probably not going to have that experience, because we're not supposed to see a shark. So, you're not going to hear a story of a shark did nothing today, because that's what they're doing 99.99% of the time. But if they, near the beaches, people are fishing and they're chumming the waters, and they can smell the fish guts for 5 miles. So if it gets in the stream, they smell like, oh, there's fish. And as you can see from the film, their function is to clean the ocean of sick and dying fish. And when a fish is cut and dying, it does that. And guess what? When we're in the water and they see the flesh, it looks like a fish. They're biting, thinking we're a fish. As soon as they taste us, they let go. It's like, oh, it's not a fish. It's like bone. And it tastes disgusting. I've been in the water with them and cut my hand open, and I thought, oh, they could have cared less. The human blood meant nothing to them. So it turned into a love affair in that first trip to the Bahamas when I went in the water with them, and they were just so, I couldn't believe it. They were so interesting. And when I had the food, it was when I was hand feeding them that they came right up to me, and it was just, they went over my head. It was like the opening shot of Star Wars. Remember, I was like, oh my God. And they got in line and went in order. And that's when I was like, oh my God, they're like dogs. And we saw this one shark that kept following us, and she had the scar, and like, oh yeah, that's Lucy. We named her Lucy. She came to us and she had a hook, and there was a YouTube video, Shark Asks Divers for Help. And you can see that this shark was following in the Bahamas like the tourists. They would just come up to them every day, and she went up to the divers and they waited for her, and she came up and let them cut the hook out of her mouth, and then was like swimming around in circles, so happy, and followed them. And then the scar healed. Like, I was like, oh my God, like the shark had the awareness to go up to the divers and ask them for help and let them. I was like, I had no idea that sharks have that level of sensitivity or intelligence, because their brain is the size of a walnut. They just want to eat you. They just want to kill you. And then when I was in the water with a tiger shark, I mean, they're literally like, is that fish? Is that fish? And they come up and you can just kind of ninja them. It was like a Star Wars scene where you don't shove them. Basically, the shark will read off your energy. And when you're even 15 or 20 feet down with them, they're so chill and they're so zen that you're like, and they have very colorful eyes and they look right at you. And I saw the great whites like doing this, and one of the scientists told me that's the mouth gaping is them communicating. They're communicating to each other with jaw movements and fin signals. And even when they go up and breach, down below there's an order and a hierarchy and a social. You never see two sharks breach on a seal or breach on a piece of tuna. They're like, now it's your turn, now it's my turn, now it's your turn. So, there's a reason they've been around for 400 million years and survived, but they're really not going to survive this. And people think it's hyperbole, but you have to do the math. I mean, I went out. There was a section we caught where I was in Nova Scotia at high tourist season, at high shark season, and there wasn't a single shark. And they're like, yeah, 5 years ago these waters were really filled, but maybe it's just a bad day, or maybe they've just been sucked out of the water. I mean, that you saw when we were on the Libico too. They caught it, that was on day 3, it was supposed to be there 18 days, it would have completely wiped out the shark populations to the point where if they take 11 years or 18 years to reproduce and have fully sexually mature pups, and they're killing 11,000 an hour, like just do the math. But then when I found out how useless it was, like that not only does the soup have no taste, but that it has all these neurotoxins that cause brain damage and impotence and disease, and then they're feeding the meat which has so much mercury, and these poor people in Latin America and Brazil and Indonesia that are just eating shark and none of it's tested. It's like cigarettes in the 50s. Like, oh yeah, smoke after dinner, it's healthy, it's relaxing. So you just realize that this is, and then the saddest part was when you realize how many of the scientists, like we'd go to meet with a scientist, not like once in the movie, there were some we met with that were like, there's really not a problem. They can completely reproduce. A lot of this is overblown. Activists, they want everything so the sky is falling. And then you find out that their whole lab is paid for by the fishing industry. And they're paid to create data that says, see, there's nothing wrong. So the fishing industry has its tentacles, the industry has its tentacles into the NGOs. So it's very rare to find people like Gary Stokes, Reggie Domingo, or that can't be bought off, because a lot of these people are very well intentioned. They're like, well, I can do more good than bad, but yeah, I'm gonna say it's sustainable. It's crazy.
Yeah. It seems to me like education is a big component here, both education about sharks themselves and demystifying them, and also education about the industry. And so I guess, you show at the end some of that about VR and about posters, and I'm thinking about like, how do we make it more accessible? How do we make the information more accessible, or have an education campaign? And I'm wondering if you have thoughts about that.
Yeah, I've talked with Ocean Ramsey and Michael Muller, and we're like, what kind of there's World Oceans Day, but there's no do we start World Shark Day? Like, someone should just start World Shark Day, like where you just understand and educate about sharks. The problem is that you don't want to make them seem like friendly, wonderful beings, because, I've been in the water with them. I'm with divers that have been doing it for years, and they can read the fin signals and go, this female's being aggressive, we shouldn't, let's go up. So, we're not supposed to have interactions with them, really. And they're there all the time. Every time you go in the water, there's sharks there. They don't want to be seen by us. They're very afraid of us. Like I found with the great hammerheads, they're 20 feet. If you go up to them, you have to hold your breath, because if you blow bubbles, they'll freak out and swim away. Even with the tiger sharks, when I swam up to them, you're like swimming and swimming, but you're holding your breath, because as soon as you exhale and they're not used to you, they're like, whoa. Otherwise, if you let them, they'll circle for like 45 minutes before they get that close to you. That's how cautious they are. They're just like, what are you? But the great whites are different. You have to be in a cage, and they're like, are you predator or prey? Like, if they see you, they leave you alone. But in terms of education, maybe I have to make some kind of Disney Black Stallion movie that people fall in love with a shark or something.
I thought Baby Shark would be the one.
I thought Baby Shark would do it, but I almost put Baby Shark in the movie. Like, it's crazy how kids don't judge. Like, think about that. Like, the most popular video on YouTube is Baby Shark, because it's mommy shark, grandma shark, daddy shark. For a child, the sharks have a mother, grandmother, parents. Like, kids understand innately that a shark has a family, but because they don't show emotion, because they don't have faces, because we can't tell what they're thinking. Like with reptiles, they're just like, oh, they're like, you think that they don't have feelings. But as Joe Romero says, all animals feel fear. And what's crazy now is like, you see the fishing tournament. There's the Block Island one is happening in July in Block Island, Rhode Island. There was I don't know if the Star Island one in Montauk is happening. It's a huge shark fishing tournaments all summer going on in Montauk and Boston. And a lot of them go, oh no, we're catch and release. And it's like, yeah, if you drag a shark 30 miles an hour with a hook in its mouth, it releases so much adrenaline from the stress. They pull it up and it's freaked out, and they drop it in and they just die, because they've had too much of an adrenaline rush. So I think that it's we can have fun with movies. Like, look, I make movies where people are chopped up and all the time, but I don't think they cause people to not try to be alive. I just think it's like, oh, it's hilarious, it's a horror movie. And I don't think shark movies, I get why they're fun, because it's like an awesome horror movie monster, but I think the problem is that the industry relies on keeping everyone afraid. There's no balance, there's no counterpoint to it. And I think that and most people are like, well, I'm never going in the ocean, so I don't give a fuck about them, or if I go in the ocean, I don't want to get eaten. So the problem is that when you go, no, this is affecting your oxygen, and all of this stuff is being used in lipstick when there's a plant alternative, and all of these pills that you see at GNC are actually horrible for you. They're causing inflammation and the death of a species. It's like Tiger Balm or one of these things. They're actually made with, or like in tiger paw, monkey paw, tiger bones, that just wiped out the species with superstition. So it's really a horrible, that guy created that sharks don't get cancer, which is complete nonsense, just to start a line of products. So I just think it's like us being vocal. Social media, you can educate people, and just letting people know that sharks are there to make the ocean swimmable for us. Without sharks, they get covered in algae and acid, and the whole ecosystem's out of balance. So it's very challenging. And like I said in the beginning, there's always something more important than sharks. So I just thought, you know what, fuck it. People can say whatever they want about it. And every time I speak up about sharks, people are like, well, you don't care about those kids that were killed. It's like, of course you do, but like, that's what people, they sort of want to, like the fishing industry loves that because they want you to not pay attention. They want us to be asleep at the wheel because they're making money. And the truth is, the whole thing really is a lie. It's like the tobacco industry. It's all a lie. And if you see someone, anytime you see a dead shark, somebody is making money from that. And when you look at the sponsors of these tournaments where it's like Yamaha, Bass Pro Shops, but then I saw like Boston Red Sox, Boston Bruins, Fleet Bank, you're like, what? And then we called them and they were like, we didn't give them authorization. Like half the companies didn't know, and other people were like, we just thought it was a charity tournament, or we had no idea it was endangered. So what's interesting is the sponsors of these tournaments, the shark fishermen go, hey, do you want to help us? We're doing a local thing, benefit, it's for charity, it's for our friend who's a captain who died. And they go, of course we do, because it's a fishing community. But what they don't tell you is they're like killing sharks. Like, well, we only killed 10 sharks. Well, yeah, you do that across every city. The point is, what blew me away was in the Bahamas when they're like, even from a financial opportunity, one shark dead is gonna be worth, what, $30 from a fisherman selling it, or $100. Alive, it's worth $250,000 in tourist money. So if people wanna be entrepreneurial, like if you wanna do a charity thing, fine. But if you did a charity event that was doing a dive, and that's what Brian, whose daughter Ella's in the movie, she's a little girl who's crying with a mako shark. Brian used to be a shark fisherman and was like, this is crazy, this is not sustainable. Now he does dive tourism, and he took a lot of shit from the other fishermen, and now he's doing very well. And look, there's VR, you can get in the water, but I just think there has to be, 50 years ago, we all got together and saved the whales. Or in the late 60s, whatever it was, save the whales. And whales used to be called monsters. Gorillas were called monsters. Elephants were called monsters. Look at orcas. It wasn't until blackfish that they were called like killer whales and devilfish. And now you're like, it's unimaginable, to think of an orca that way. But really it was blackfish. So I was like, I have to do something that, and look, I'm very thankful that it's on Discovery Plus, which is now merged with HBO Max. So hopefully that'll combine those viewers, but it's people like you coming out to see it, telling your friends, and festivals like this, like Doc NYC, they just make it possible to get the message out, because it's hard to get people to care, is the truth.
Yeah, and it's awesome to hear you talk with passion, and obviously you spent 5 years of your life working on this, putting it out. I don't know you very well, but I think you're a man of action, a man who likes to, you have a plan, you do a thing, and I observe you in this film getting very frustrated. That moment on the boat where you offer to buy the shark to save its life, and then it still doesn't save the shark. And so I guess, I'm curious to hear you talk about how you can be a person of action and also still be patient and still be observant.
Well, this is one of the things I learned, you catch more flies with honey. Like you can't think of these people as your enemies, and you can't think of like, I'm gonna expose them and fucking ruin their lives. I don't want that. Like, no one's life is ruined, just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean you should go and cancel them, ruin their lives, embarrass them, destroy their business. And I think that is sort of, there's a lot of people's MO is to do that to other people. And they get this like joyful feeling of like destroying another person, but really they are your neighbors, they are your friends, and they just don't know. They haven't been educated. That I just kept thinking there's so much money that the fishing industry has spent sort of brainwashing everybody into thinking that they're monsters, that there's plenty of, and that they should all be killed, that these people don't really understand because no one has told them otherwise. So my approach was, and certainly being going into China, going into Africa, I can't just be like the white Jew from Hollywood with a camera crew coming in telling people how to, I'm not gonna tell a Mexican fisherman how to live his life. I wanna hear this story. I'm here to just honestly and openly hear their opinion. That's why, we sat down with the shark traders. I wasn't out to like make them look bad. I'm like, please just, I don't understand. You guys know there's a limited supply of this. You know it's running out. Why are you still doing this? And they're like, well, if we take away the sharks, there'll be more fish because they eat all the fish. It's like, and that's what they really think, or that's their excuse. But it's just like, wow, that's insane. I mean, that's just like nonsense. But also, there's a lot of crazy stuff. Like I learned that Mitsubishi is buying all the world's, they're cornering the market on bluefin tuna. They're killing every bluefin tuna and they're freezing them. Mitsubishi, you're like, what? The car and the television, yeah. They're wiping out the world supply of tuna. So you're just like, this whole industry is like this crazy, weird, corrupt. And then when you try to protect tuna, the bluefin tuna, Japan's the only country that blocks it. Well, obviously, guess who's getting paid off to keep, allowing them to kill all the tuna? It's so, the whole thing is corrupt. When you see that the politicians are bought off, what you can do is take action with your dollars. And you might think, okay, well, I'm never gonna have shark fin soup. Well, it's great. Reggie Domingo's system, she's like, pick one avenue. Like, maybe you wanna go after the tournaments. Maybe it's the squalene and the lipstick and makeup products, making sure that it says shark-free or that it's plant-based. Maybe it's going to be those health products in GNC. Maybe it's shipping of fins with FedEx. Maybe it's, the soup that's, they're like, these are the restaurants or these hotel chains or something. If you can pick one, you can make it doable, because then you can go to the tournaments, Google Monster Shark Tournament, East Coast, they'll all come up, go after the sponsors and send them the links to how endangered sharks are, and go, why are you paying to kill our most important endangered species? And they go, even if they're not threatened, like the science community, a lot of these people are bought off, and they go, well, you can't really count the sharks. I mean, you're up against major forces, but the corporations don't want to be seen as destroying the planet. They're like, even major corporations are like starting to wake up, so we just didn't know. So I always even my approach with this fisherman in Boston was, I wasn't gonna go down and fight those guys. I was just gonna go down them and film, NOAA, the organization that's there, they still haven't listed they still won't ban fishing makos. They're still allowing the mako, and then they would show up at the tournaments, and I was like, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, well, they're killing them anyways, we collect the data. And then the fishermen are like, well, NOAA's here and they need this data, so we gotta kill the sharks. So I was like, that woman Lisa Nathan, I was like, why would you show up to this? Like, why is NOAA? And then I went after NOAA last year, I got everyone tweeting them and posting them, and you know what they did? They just shut their comments off. And I was like, dude, these are our tax dollars paying this, so go after NOAA, make them explain, go, why are you allowing shark fishing tournaments? Why are you allowing, we're paying our tax money for you guys, why are you saying that makos aren't threatened? Like, why are we fishing them at all? That's my question, is when people are like, well, they're not threatened. I was like, well, what's the point of fishing it? Like, why? You can't eat the meat, you can't eat the fins, the cartilage is poisonous, the liver oil has a plant-based alternative. Like, why are you doing it? And it's like, oh, because the size of your dick, like, that's why you're doing it. And then I saw this girl on Instagram in a bikini posted, I put it up on my Instagram, where she's like posing with a dead thresher shark, and people are like, thresher shark, delicious. I was like, great. I mean, this is what you're gonna get, because everyone has been told. So you just be prepared for people to mock. It's like, if you can just handle people making fun of you and saying shit about you and not caring, you'll be fine. But basically it comes from people, nobody wants to change their behavior, and nobody wants to be told to change their behavior. So my approach is always like, you guys can keep doing this, but this is how you're fucking it up for your kids. So you're now just telling it, now that you have the information, you are making the decision to fuck things up for everyone for no reason other than ego and greed, because there isn't a single reason to kill a shark. So you just have to be patient with them, not make anyone the bad guy. Look, we've all done shit that we didn't know was bad. We all have. But then you go, oh fuck, I didn't realize that was recycled. I remember when that became a thing. I was like, really? More than newspapers? Don't aluminum cans just magically? No, all that stuff. And now being zero waste household, all the stuff that we suddenly realized that you can do. Zero waste, oh, it's a pain in the ass. Do I really want to compost? And then you do it. You're like, oh, this is so much easier. So I think it's just picking one thing and trying to convert one friend and voting with your dollar. And the truth is your voice matters more than you realize. That's the other thing. The fishing industry and these people spend a lot of money to make you all think that you don't matter. And you do, and they're terrified of that. And they're terrified when people use their voice. And one person's voice can change it, and it's not the loudest one. It's like one person can make a TikTok, can make a video, can tag a thing that their friends can see, and it can just, if you think it's not gonna matter, well, people won't do it. But if people think, oh, they'll actually respond to me and listen to me, and you just try to make them, like, please help the cause, like, we need you on our side. If you say we can't do this without you, like, we need you, then they're more likely to go, yeah, sure, okay.
I want to throw it to the audience for audience questions. Yeah, right there.
My question is, if you got a meeting with Spielberg, what would be your ask? What would you want?
It's interesting because I was making a movie for Spielberg for his company, Emblem, while I was also making this documentary, but I couldn't tell anyone I was doing it. It was a kid's movie called The House with a Clock in Its Walls. So he was like paying, my bills while I was making this. I remember I was editing and I was like, I'll be right back. They're like, oh, we have a test screening on Tuesday. I was like, can we push it a week? They're like, why? I was like, I want to edit a little more. And then I went to Liberia. My editor's like, you what? And then I was like, another one. I was like, I'll be right back. He's like, great. I was like, I'm going to Hong Kong. He's like, wait, tomorrow? When are you back? And then another one, I was like, he's like, okay, where'd you go now? And I showed him pictures of me with the tiger sharks. He's like, because of course they wouldn't have let me go if I'd asked permission. So I want Steven to see it because I think he's a very caring person about this kind of stuff. And I was like, Steven, I would ask him who he knows, whether it's Jeff Bezos. Like, we need one company to come out and say, we're shark free. Amazon's selling like over 300 shark products that have shark in the title, not stuff eating. That's not even counting what's containing squalene. It's like shark this, shark that. If you go into that, it's probably thousands. But if Jeff Bezos and Amazon said, we are shark free, or do you know Fred Smith from FedEx? Can you ask him to watch us and not ship shark fin? Because once the major companies do it, the dominoes would fall. Because the truth is, yes, Jaws scared us, but killing sharks wasn't a problem when Jaws came out. It wasn't a problem until the mid-90s when China got money and they started, the hotel trick took off. When it was 2 hotels in Hong Kong serving shark fin soup, it didn't matter, but when everyone started doing it at weddings, that's when it just exploded. When it became a status symbol, that's when it exploded. And you see the younger generations like, this is crazy. We don't want people thinking of us this way. We refuse to have it at the wedding. But the older generation, they're like, well, we eat it because it's expensive, because it makes us look rich. So, yeah, I would just ask him who's the most powerful. I want to show him the doc and go, who can we, will you host a screening with me? And who do you know that can be affected by this, that can actually make a decision with their company to stop selling shark products, to stop enabling this, that sends a message this is not okay.
Other questions?
Well, I mean, you had said earlier that sort of we could do another, we had save the whales and probably but quite a while ago. Given that there's a lot of skepticism and disinformation about pretty much everything, do you think that we're going to be able to get a real big campaign going of people saying, save the sharks?
I do. I mean, I think that I was very aware of not making a sort of manipulative documentary that was like too emotional. I really wanted to show both sides. I wanted you to understand where the fishermen were coming from. I wanted you to understand where the fishermen that are basically enslaved on these, European and Chinese fishing vessels are coming from, and where the shark traders are coming from, and where the restaurants are coming from. I want everyone to be like, well, this is why we're doing it, and this is okay, just so that everyone's point of view is represented, and it's just like we can all draw the conclusion. I mean, to me, it's just simple math. It's like, look how many years, just pointing out to people the scientific fact of this is how many years it takes for a shark to reach sexual maturity. This is how many, they have 7 or 8 pups, that's it, and look how many are being killed. And you can say it's propaganda, but you can look at the footage, you can look at anything. There's so many videos, there's so much research out there showing how the sharks are being killed at that rate that it's hard to argue. But even the basic question you just have to ask anyone is, why do it at all? Why is there a single reason for sport fishing, for food, for anything? Why do it? And they could go, well, it's cheap protein in Indonesia. Okay, well, why don't we find another way to help feed Indonesia other than shark? I'm sure there's another way. I mean, that's part of the problem is, like, yes, there's always going to be bycatch. I mean, sharks are gonna get caught in nets, they're gonna get on hooks. If you're catching tuna, you're gonna get sharks, because that's what they're eating. That's gonna happen. A lot of it is bycatch. That's unfortunate. We can all take a break from eating fish to help, but I think killing the industry, I mean, look what happened with the ivory game. We killed that movie, really helped. China's like, we're not selling ivory anymore. And they went to the ivory supplies and they burnt the ivory. They're like, enough. We cannot own anything made out of ivory because it has killed every elephant on the planet. We stopped it. And that's recently, that's just a couple of years ago. We don't keep orcas in tanks anymore, but we did. Everyone's like, well, we love SeaWorld, we love those shows. So it really can be done. And, I think it's just a matter of, don't even do the information about, like, don't argue with people about statistics, just go, why can we have happy and fulfilled lives without this? And you're gonna hard to find anyone who's gonna argue that an enjoyable life is dependent on killing sharks. They're gonna go, well, I like it. Okay, well, the shark doesn't like it.
Let's see, in the hat here.
It seems to me that if you're gonna mobilize, you have to mobilize young people. And young people probably aren't gonna watch a lot of Discovery TV. They watch movies sometimes in the college campuses, high schools, etc. And I think this has real impact on the large screen that it might not have on a small screen. Is there some way we can package it for colleges, etc., with some of your more cult fare so they see both?
Yeah, I mean, look, I can't control who sees it, and we've tried to. I mean, look, Nina Dobrev has been really supportive. She was in the show Vampire Diaries, and she's one of the exec producers, and she reaches a very young audience. And so Nina posting about the movie and supporting the movie really helped get young people. And Discovery Plus does, they're like, I do a bunch of horror shows for Discovery Plus that do very well with younger people. And I think that, right now they have 20 million subscribers, and HBO Max has 70 million. So eventually, I'm waiting for that merger. If we're lucky and we get an Emmy nomination, then I think Discovery will be really excited to give it a push and put it in that category on HBO Max of our award-winning. It's already won awards, but like, if Discovery and HBO merge and HBO, they put it on a page where they feature our award-winning doc from me, or like, here are Eli's horror movies, but also watch this one, it's his scariest movie. That I think is probably gonna be the best bet, but I agree with you. I would love to package some kind of educational program with it. I think there just needs to be a plan and a movement and a drive to do it. And I think the more kind of talk and discussion there is about the movie, then the more likely that is to happen, because we've all been pushing for stuff like that, but I don't disagree with you.
If you have an in with colleges and universities, talk to Eli.
Yeah.
We have time for one more, I think. Yes.
Oh, hi, thanks. I would be more positive about the young generation. I'm thinking Greta put climate change on the map. Now, her generation saying we don't have any oceans. I mean, I think they're the ones to target. But back to this film.
Thank you.
My question to you is, could you explain more how sharks clean the ocean? You mentioned there's no more algae.
Yeah.
Could you go into that again?
Yeah, basically the two things they do is there's sick and dying fish, and that's what the shark are eating. So it's like a vacuum that's just taking out the disease, dying, anything that's rotting, dying, a dead fish floating, that's gonna fester, the shark eats it. And they're basically function as, like, it cleans the water. So the water is not filled with dead fish, it's healthy. It also keeps predators in check. When sharks are present, there aren't a lot of grouper around, because the grouper get threatened and eaten by the shark. Now what the grouper do is the grouper eat the parrotfish. And what the parrotfish do is the parrotfish feed on algae. So if the sharks aren't there, you get, instead of 2 grouper, you'll have 100 grouper. So now the parrotfish are wiped out. Well, the grouper don't eat the algae. The parrotfish eat the algae, but the grouper eat the parrotfish. So now the algae starts to spread. And you can see it. I mean, you look at the beaches in Mexico that have had, you know, the algae problems where people are going to Tulum and they're like, don't go in the water because it's like 30 feet of sludge. You can't get rid of it. You can't just like scoop it out. The algae is too thick and you can't go in it because it's so acidic that you can't swim in that water. And what it does is the algae puts this like basically thick, like imagine a pool with a pool covering over it. Now the kelp doesn't get sunlight. Now the kelp are dying, and the kelp is half of our oxygen. All those forests underwater that need that sunlight, and the oxygen can't get out, and the sunlight can't get in. So that's just one example of how they keep it in check. But it's real, and the effect is called the trophic cascade. There's that video on YouTube of when they reintroduced wolves into Yellowstone Park, all the different effects it had, and the rivers came back and the trees, because they kept the ecosystem in balance. That's actually their function. So I saw the two beaches. I mean, that opening beach where, you know, the shark gets hit in the head with a baseball bat, which was like, I couldn't believe them having another bat scene in a movie. It was like, this is not what I imagined. The beach that borders it, literally the next beach, flipped from fishing to diving. The Castro family at Cabo Pulmo is the name of the beach in Baja, Mexico. They turned it to dive tourism, and it's evergreen, and everyone there has like, you know, cars or air conditioning. Like the quality of life is so much better, and they have this incredible biosphere, like just a mile over. And then you go into Los Frailes where they're fishing them, and it's just like barren. It's empty waters and just like death and dead coral. And the other one is like thousands of species because they're sharks. Now the problem is sharks are pelagic. They don't just stay in one place, they travel the whole globe. So, you know, you wish you could keep them there, but every time you're diving with them, you're like, I hope I get to see you again. So it's hard, but it's real. I mean, that's their function, and then you're like, okay, we're taking that out of nature, and you're like, for what? For these stupid pills, for the meat you can't eat, for soup that has no taste, for some like doctor's ego on a Facebook page with their fishing trip, for these stupid shark tournaments to take photos for social media. Like we're actually destroying everything for that. And I thought, you know what? Sharks don't have vocal cords, but we do. So everyone, thank you for coming, and please use your voices, because they will tell you they don't matter, but every single voice counts, truly.
Yeah, I think that's a great note to end on.